Well, actually, some people think Bitcoin is digital gold.
Yeah, that is true.
And it's funny because, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago, there were many players in the space, in the crypto blockchain, whatever, Web3, digital asset space, who are attacking gold, right? And I always thought it's crazy to do that because the people who are gold investors, they're some of the early, or should be the early adopters to Bitcoin, because some of the fundamentals that drive a position in gold, like for instance, you're long gold because you're worried about debasement of fiat, right? Or you're long gold because you're expecting liquidity to come from, interest rate drops. A lot of those things also drive the Bitcoin price. Whereas a stock investor, typical long only equity investor, is looking at the balance sheet, income statement, meeting the CEO. To think about currency, or a hedge for the debasement of fiat is not really like on their mind so much. So it wasn't as big a jump as you might think to go from being a gold trader and investor. I mean, I did that, within the framework of macro trading and investing, to sort of understanding and getting Bitcoin. And in fact, it was through my physical gold company, GBI, that I founded in 2009. In 2012, that company integrated with a company called BitReserve, which today is the Uphold wallet. And we were the first place in the world that you could buy or sell gold to buy or sell Bitcoin or Ripple. And so my introduction was 2012, 2013, took a year to integrate with them. And because the two platforms to integrate, but that was my introduction and it made sense. This is, digital gold. It's a lot more. I don't think at that time I understood sort of the complexity of blockchains, and I wasn't able to make my way through yet to the Satoshi white paper. It was just seemed very, it took me some time, but having had that background in gold and thinking about all the reasons why one would invest in gold, they're very similar to why one invest in Bitcoin. So for me, it was a natural progression.
Do you still have friends or colleagues that are in the gold investing side that don't see the value of Bitcoin?
Yeah.
What do they say?
Yeah. Well,
and what do you say back?
I think they haven't done the work. Or they have done the work, but people they're so committed to their sort of philosophy. Like I'm a big believer in gold. I think that gold is the best hedge for the traditional system. If you're long a portfolio of stocks, bonds, commodities, currencies, whatever it is, I think gold is a great hedge. Like every traditional portfolio, and whether it's a 70, 30, 60, 40 mix or 70, 20, 10 or whatever the mix is, you should have 5 to 10% of your portfolio in gold. So I think it serves that purpose. To me, Bitcoin and the digital asset world is, I would say, a hedge against the old world. I think that, if you look at any digital asset, it's outperformed anything in the traditional world dramatically over the last 10 years. And this is something that is very hard for people to understand. So what do I mean? If you go back 10, 11 years ago, the NASDAQ, which has done very well over the last 10 years, is actually down about, over 99% against Bitcoin. It's also down 99% against Ripple. It's down 99% against a lot of digital assets that you might not even think are worthy. And so I find that very interesting. It's almost, I see the digital world holistically, the digital asset ecosystem. That's Bitcoin, Ethereum, all the alternative alt currencies, if you want to call them that, or alternative protocols, other blockchains, and all the equity of the businesses in the space. And so that whole world has been appreciating against the old world of real estate, stocks, bonds, in a really dramatic way. And so I have that sort of really from 20,000 plus feet perspective on and as an investor, it's more of an investment perspective. I want to be in the next 10 years in things that are going to appreciate the most. And I think you're losing tremendous purchasing power if you keep all of your assets only in the fiat world. So gold, for instance, which I love and which is a hedge to the traditional world, gold will also go down tremendously versus Bitcoin, ETH, and many of the other assets in the digital world.
So have you segued away from gold then?
No, I still have my exposure and I'm still own my share of that business, and I participate in board meetings. I'm not active in it. I don't know that I was only active at the founding and a little bit afterwards. And I think many gold guys have a little bit of Bitcoin, but the thing is that's really different about it is the average age of the gold owner has got to be something north of 50 or 60. It's a very old market. And Bitcoin and the digital world, the average age is like 30. And there's a lot of energy there. And I think, sometimes you read on X, people talking about, we, the OG Bitcoiners, and I don't mean me, just generally OG, we memed Bitcoin into existence. We willed it into existence. And I think, things move as a result of energy. And the energy in the gold space is weak. It's not great. It's older people, guys who've already made it. There's no dynamic interaction. I mean, in the crypto space, you've got a conference every single week, and there are thousands or hundreds of people.
Events,
you can't even go side events. You go to Singapore 2049, there are 800 side events in 2 days. There is so much energy. People really, it's not just pushing a narrative. People have committed their life to Bitcoin becoming an integral part of the financial system and our whole economy. And it's even bigger than that. And if you listen to Saylor, sometimes people think, okay, well, he goes over the top a bit much. He's, micro strategy or strategy is, it's over leveraged or this or that. Forget about all of that. Just listen to I was at DAS last week and I heard his, 21 points to be in Bitcoin and it's really brilliant. It's very tight, very clean. It's a very thoughtful, intellectual approach. Even I, after sitting there listening to that, thought, oh my goodness, I don't have enough Bitcoin. I mean, how is it possible? Or I don't have enough exposure.
Right.
I do. I don't have any exposure in the old world anymore, except for gold and, a little bit of real estate. I just don't, because all of those assets have depreciated a lot against everything else that I have that's in the digital world. So that joke on X, sell a kidney and and DACA your Bitcoin. It's extreme, but you go in and you listen to Michael, and his argument's just so clean and tight now. Like in the beginning, I think he was, a little ebullient and, very emotional about it. And I think that's wonderful. That's what's driving it. But it's just such a refined argument. So the energy that a guy like that has and the thousands of people who came to listen to him or to hear Trump at DAS as well. I mean, that audience was packed. I mean, it was incredible. You don't have that at a gold conference.
I don't think so, yeah.
No. And I think that the institutional adoption of gold in the US specifically has been very slow. It's been slower than I would have thought. But, look, Americans like to own businesses that cash flow. They like to see an income statement, a balance sheet. They want to see a team. They want to see a CEO. And you don't break, 100 years plus of equity investing, history, and you have the greats like Warren Buffett, and he's just been a long only, essentially S&P plus type of investor. Right. And yes, he was long for 50 years, more, and 60 years, and that's been a great bet. So Americans, I think, and this might get into something more that we'll talk about in a few minutes, but I think equity as a form of ownership of business and of savings allocation isn't going away overnight. And on the other hand, I think everything of value is migrating on chain. And so I think in the next 10, 15 years, everything of value will be put on a blockchain.
Yeah.
And it will all be fungible with each other. And this movement with RWAs, I think, is sort of the beginning of it. This seems to really be picking up momentum. DeFi has definitely exploded again. And there's starting to be what I call growth stage protocols. So protocols that are, producing $200 million in revenue, where the value or the revenue doesn't accrue to an equity, it accrues to the token. Like, Aave would be a perfect example. And so I think we're moving in that world. But on the other hand, we're not getting there tomorrow. And this is a segue into what we do. I think that many of the companies, private companies that we invested in 10T and 1RT are, going to be having IPOs. They're going to be SPAC. There's going to be M&A. There's only one large crypto blockchain company that's public in the world, and that's Coinbase. And it seems to me really crazy that we've got $5 trillion of value in our space now. Bitcoin, ETH, and all the businesses we estimate are worth around $5 trillion, with only one large public company. I'm excluding the miners. They, to me, are more of a Bitcoin proxy.
Yes, yeah.
But in terms of businesses that are helping build the space, that are infrastructure, I think, our portfolio is going to have 3, 4, potentially more realizations in the next year. And I think we could have as many as, 6 to 10 in the next 2 years.
IPOs from crypto companies.
Yeah, we have Circle and we have eToro and, there are rumors about Gemini, and there was announced Kraken potentially is looking at Q1 26. And so, we have a company of ours that was approached by a SPAC. So to me, you don't go from where we are today to everything's on chain and everyone has a digital wallet and everything is, digital. There's an intermediate step. And I think that getting capital to the more successful, larger companies in the space, there's a lot of venture and there's also, there's some fraudulent actors. We had to live through SBF and FTX, and he really set the space back.
Right.
He did a lot of damage to the credibility that the space has been attempting to build over the last 10 years. And I think a public stamp of approval, whether, you can go through the process and be on NYC or NASDAQ or SPAC'd, it will help build trust in our world.